Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grandstand Sports Data, your go to channel for sports, statistics, and unbiased handicapping. In today's video, we will be giving you the tips and research and tips when handicapping, coaching for sports betting. We will be diving deep into this fundamental factor to see what some of the most profitable sports bettors look at when handicapping specific coaching. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So here you're going to see some of the fundamental factors that we look at in the world of sports betting. We highlighted coaching because that's what this video will be based on today. If you want a broader look into these fundamental factors, check out our fundamental factors video, as I will leave a pop-up in the top right and a link in the description below. Also, hit the subscribe button so you can be the first to see some of these videos on other fundamental factors that we will produce in the future. So, what do we analyze when it comes to coaching and betting on sports? So, we at Grandstand Sports Data, we like to break it down into these 8 categories that you see here, but we will cover them more in depth throughout this presentation. So, let's first start with track record. And track record, this is going to be when you look at the coach's track record in terms of wins, losses, and overall performance, consider their success rate over multiple seasons and in various situations. So when we say situations, we could be talking about different playoff games, we could be talking divisional matchups, we could also be talking about rivalry games if they're not in division. You can also split these up into home versus away, also against specific opponents, playoff performance like we mentioned. So all this is you're looking at situations, but you're also looking at their track record as a whole as well. Now, this only satisfies the money line when you're talking about betting. So, what else are you going to have to look at? You want to look at that specific coaches against the spread record if you're betting against the spread. So, you want to know his against the spread record for his whole career, his against the spread record for playoff games, against the spread record for specific opponents. Just like we touched on in all the different situations, that's what you want to touch on and against the spread record as well. So please don't leave that out. The next would be strategy and tactics. You could think of this like style versus style. It's broken down into offensive schemes and defensive schemes. This is when you evaluate the coach's style of play, offensive and defensive tactics, also game management decisions. Some coaches are known for their aggressive approach, while others prioritize defense or ball control, depending on the sport that you're handicapping. You have to understand that these strategies can help predict game outcomes. Like you want to know what offensive schemes do good against some certain defensive schemes. Um, Please note though that these are not in-game adjustments. This will be covered later. This is more of what the team's identity is and what their style is going into a matchup. Think of it like Phil Jackson, his triangle offense, or the Shanahans with their coaching tree, how they run a modified West Coast offense. Um, they just have that certain scheme that goes into every single game. What you want to do is identify the scheme, like I said, and what it does well against, what it does not do well against. And you want to do that vice versa. We got more in depth in terms of this certain factor in a different video. It was our handicap and matchups video, which we just dropped about a week ago. You can take a look at that as well. We'll put a link in the description below. So hopefully you enjoy that video as well. So next will be player development. Uh, this is when the coach will assess the ability to develop players, particularly young talent. A coach who excels at nurturing and improving players' skills can have a significant impact on team performance over time. You can see this if you're handicapping a pro sport. You're going to see this how well they draft or how well So the coach isn't necessarily responsible for the draft. That could be the general manager. But what you want to see is that player is improving either year by year, game by game, week by week, depending on the sport that you're handicapping. So predominantly, you're going to be grading players that were drafted and how well they're performing going forward under the coach. So next, you would say college is mostly recruiting, how this particular person or particular player was recruited in the college game or maybe the amateur game. So say they get a freshman running back. You want to see by his sophomore, junior year that he is increasing and he's, battling for top spots in the depth chart. And that's how you will gauge a coach and how he develops players within his organization. Finally, would be like individual sports. Individual sports are a little bit tougher. This you're going to see, maybe if you're handicapping a coach, you're going to look at other athletes. And what we mean by this is like in MMA, like Greg Jackson. If fighters go to Greg Jackson's camp, are there younger fighters that are improving at a rate where they're going to become champions one day? That's one way to handicap a coach or manager, for lack of a better word, when we're talking about um, managers in the fight game. Then also is their game improving? And what we mean by this is, say if a fighter switches camps, he goes from one camp to another. When he goes to that other camp, that camp B, is his game improving? So that's another way to look at handicapping just the development of either a fighter or anybody in an individual sport. You can apply this to swimming, you can apply this to golf. Are they improving styles of their game based on their coaching, whether it's new coaching or the coach that they've been with for years? Next, we're going to move on to injury management. And this is when we consider how the coach handles player injuries and adjust the team's lineup accordingly. Some coaches are adept at, managing injuries and maintaining team cohesion despite setbacks, while others may struggle in this area. Some things that you do look for in this is adjusting lineups and tactics. Coaches must adapt their lineups and tactical approaches based on their player injuries. This may involve reshuffling positions, altering formations, or changing playing styles to compensate for the absence of key players. Next would be managing player workload. You'll see this a lot in the NBA. When it comes to workload management, injuries can be exacerbated by overtraining or insufficient rest. Coaches must carefully manage player workloads and avoid fatigue-related injuries while ensuring that players maintain their fitness levels throughout the whole entire season. Next would be utilizing depth and bench players. This would be depth on the roster becomes crucial when injuries occur. Coaches must have confidence in their bench players. And last but not least would be long-term considerations. You want to make sure that coaches must balance the short-term goal of winning games with the long-term health and well-being of their players. This must make informed decisions about when to rest the players and then also when to push them to return to play. That's a little bit of a, I don't want to say a gray area, but you do want to, some people will question, well, why did this team bench this player when he could have played through this injury? And it's more of that coach is looking at the long term. Would you rather have a guy who's closer to full health? He may not be exactly at 100% full health, but closer to full health moving to the playoffs than having him, we'll use this as an NFL analogy, missing him for weeks 8 and 9 and, you know, potentially risking him for the season if he re-injures whatever he has hurt or just another injury on top of that. So long-term considerations are must they're overlooked by a lot of handicappers, but maybe very possibly the most important one here. When we get into the in-game decisions portion of the slide, this is when looking for evidence of the coach's ability to make in-game adjustments and adapt to changing circumstances. Coaches can effectively read the flow of the game and make timely substitutions or strategic changes, often have an advantage. That's why we put a picture of Dan Campbell just for comical relief. As you can see, it's broken down into two portions. It will be adjustments and adaptability. Adjustments, you can look for tactical changes. So maybe a basketball coach may switch from a man-to-man to a zone defense. This would be a tactical change in an in-game adjustment. Next would be personnel substitutions. You'll see this a lot in soccer. They really do a strategic plan on who they're going to sub in certain moments. Do we sub in an attacker for a defensive midfielder because we are down a goal? All those strategies come into play. Next would be play calling. You'd see this a lot in American football. It's an offensive coach might adjust their play calling based on the opponent's defensive scheme. Maybe the defense is blitzing more frequently, and the coach may want to call for screen passes or quick slants. Next would be formation changes. You'll see a lot of this in hockey. Coach may change from a 2-1-2 check to a 1-2-2 neutral zone trap. You see this a lot in hockey. You see this a lot in all different sports, but you need to make sure in general that the coach is making the in-game adjustments. Finally would be timeout usages. These are really crucial when to call a timeout. I know this is it's very argumentative in the game of basketball that teams that go on runs, some coaches fail to call a timeout just to kill that momentum. Next would be adaptability. In adaptability, you'll look at in-game strategy shifts. Maybe a basketball coach may adjust their team's offensive strategy if the opposing team begins double teaming their star player or anything of the like. So that's a different strategy shift as well. Also, something you need to become adaptable with is weather conditions. A lot of NFL coaches or college football coaches, games that are played outdoors, a change in weather means a change to philosophy. Next would be injury adjustments. We've already touched on this, but it's something that in game, what player can substitute and it feels like there's not much of a drop off. Opponents change. This is, a coach, he must adapt to the opponent's adjustments throughout the game. But for example, if the opposing team switches a press defense in basketball, the coach has to have that instinctive wherewithal to create, possibly a change in plays to get him to get his team to kill that press or to kill, that different defensive scheme that he is facing. Look at motivational skills. This is hard to put a number on. So at the end of this presentation, we will tell you how we can put a number on each of these categories so you could give maybe a coaching rating in terms of putting it in your model. But motivational seems to be the hardest one to put a number on. This is when you evaluate the coach's ability to inspire and motivate players, particularly during critical moments or when facing adversity. A coach who can rally their team and instill confidence can make a difference in close games. Also, look at their own motivation as well. Are they on the hot seat and coaching for their job? This will make them coach a little bit harder as well. Just note this, like I keep saying, this is mostly a fundamental factor. This is something you have to watch the team that you're handicapping and just see it. Is the coach being motivational? Is he talking up his players? Are there leaders on the team that are you know, talking up their unit? Those are some things that you have to watch. There's no number to it. So um, in terms of this, we're talking only coaching, so you want to see it from the coach, and you would grade it. I usually, when we need to put a number on something that doesn't really carry a number, so motivational skills, when I'm going to grade a team, say if I'm going to grade a coach, I would just start from 1 to 10. What does it look like his motivational skills are with this team from 1 to 10, or even 1 to 5 if you want to make it a little bit more simple. Next would be discipline and team culture. Consider the coach's approach to discipline and the team culture they foster. A cohesive and disciplined team is more likely to perform well under pressure and execute game plans effectively. You're going to look at the two different things here. Obviously, it's discipline and team culture, but with discipline, you're going to see is the coach enforcing the rules and is he enforcing the standards as well? This doesn't mean is he saying, make sure you're here at this time and fulfilling your curfew. I mean, it is to an extent, but what it is it's the rules on the field. So what you want to look at is that is his team committing a lot of fouls on the field? Are they committing a lot of penalties, a lot of flags, depending on the sport that you're looking at? Are they committing a lot of, it's not necessarily enforcing the rules like they're breaking the law, but are they committing penalties? It's something that a good coach will always limit penalties no matter what sport you're talking about. Are there consequences for violations? Now, this is more of the misconduct or the personal behavior of the team. So violations, um, can be anything from missing team meetings to whatever it is. Also, leading by example. Does the coach lead by example? That's pretty self-explanatory. And also, does he develop self-discipline? Is he very, calm, cool, and collective in some of the most crucial times during games? Next would be team culture. And this you want to look at unity and cohesion. Is the team, clapping it up for each other? Uh, celebrating when they should celebrate. Do they look down and out? That's a negative way to look at unity and cohesion. Trust and communication. A positive team's always going to have trust. They're always going to have communication, and that's relayed from the coach. You're going to see resilience and mental toughness. If you see this from the coach and then you also see it from the players in some of the most biggest moments in games, like late in fourth quarters for NFL or college football, you're going to see a very poised team, very mentally tough team that's reflective of the coach. Next would be share values and identity. This is almost like your preseason type of handicap I would look at. Does the team's goal to make the playoffs? Is the team's goal to reach the final? Is the team, so on and so forth. And do they accomplish that? Do they all have those shared values? Do they all have that identity as a club to go and reach that goal? So finally would be experience and reputation. You would consider the coach's experience at various levels of competition and their reputation within the sports community. Coaches with a proven track record and respect for peers are often reliable indicators of success. You can see a lot of these looking at accolades of coaches, looking at their coaching trees. Are there coaches that are underneath them that once coached with them or in their system? Are they out having their own success? That's another thing that you could look at when it comes to experience and reputation. So finally, this is just our way of pulling it all together. Where you know how we are now that you've got to know Grandstand Sports Data. We always try to put a number to something. So if you want to do a coaching rating system, we have the category to the left, which is the 8 topics that we just touched on, and then to the right, we have some statistics that you may figure out. That way, you can develop your own coaching rating system. So let's start from the top with track record. Usually you would want to look at the money lines, right? If you're a money line better, you want to look at their win-loss record. The next thing you would want to look at if you're a spread better is you want to see the specific coach's track record against the spread, right? So ATS, wins and losses. Also, you're going to want to break down by situations. We already described this in the first slide. Remember, what's his against the spread record in the playoffs? What's his against the spread record in the division? What's his against the spread record against specific teams that he meets all the time? Specific against the spread record against rivalry games. You want to check out everything when it comes to that. I want to say that is maybe the most important stat when it comes to building a coach and rating system. Next would be the strategy and tactics. Where could you find this? You can find this with points for, points against. If you're handicapping basketball, pace could tell you how fast they're moving the offense, how fast they want to run plays. Also, you can look in terms of when you're looking at NFL football or college football. If you go to sportsreference.com, they have a lot of good data on offensive and defensive coordinator ranks. So you can basically break down their strategy and tactics based on the coordinators also. Next would be player development. This could be out of the guys that were drafted within the system, how many turned into all pros, how many turned into all stars. This could go by the draft or recruiting. You could just put the number, or even if you want to break it down into percentages, the percentage of guys drafted that actually produced into an all pro or an all star, or even if you're talking about college sports, an all American. You know how to translate this into the sport that you're looking for. Also, would be injury management. What would we look at? We would look at the win loss record without key players. So you would look at the coach's record when, say, I know an infamous one would be Bill Belichick, what his win loss record is with Tom Brady, what his win loss record is without Tom Brady. The numbers are staggering. So it's something like that that you're going to want to look at when you're talking about injury management. Next would be adjustments and adaptability. You would look at scoring quarter by quarter. This will show you how much they're adjusting and how much they're being adaptable. Also, you can look at half by half numbers as well. Remember, this is all different compared to the sport that you're handicapping. Motivational skills, this is a little bit harder. We would look at comeback wins though. How are they in comeback wins? You would also look at clutch and late. You're starting to see these stats a lot more in every sport. Look at clutch and late stats. This is motivation. This is the coach motivating his players with a certain amount of time left in the game, either down or up. It's a motivational stat. Next would be discipline and culture. This you would look at. The discipline is always, how many fouls and how that coach disciplines that. So look at fouls, look at flags, look at penalty yards. You want to look at player ejections or even technical fouls. You're going to want to factor in all of these just to put a number on how disciplined the coach is and how he's relaying that message. Lastly would be experience and reputation. This would be maybe tallying up the awards or accolades for the specific coach. How good is his coaching tree? How many numbers of coaches have been successful under this certain coach? These are all things that you can put a number to this actual category and spit out a coaching rating. Like always, would like to thank you guys for watching. If you like our content and would like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. Also, like this if you like the content that we are giving out. This would be hugely beneficial for us, as this will, give our content throughout the YouTube algorithm and get more eyeballs on our content. Finally, also sharing and commenting down below would be greatly appreciated, and we'll see you guys in the next one.